impact that has on borrowers being qualified or not qualified. Today, I wanted to talk about forbearance when it comes to student loans. So, in many cases in the past, we've seen student loans in forbearance, delayed payment. Obviously, since COVID, there has been certain mandates that most student loans payments have been halted, interest has been halted to essentially help individuals that have student loan debt kind of reorganize their finances and whatnot. What we're running into a little bit on the mortgage side of things is, I think, just some misinterpretation and understanding of how that impacts a buyer's qualifications. So I wanted to kind of review some bullet points today as far as the impact of the forbearance or deferments with student loans. So, first of all, it's kind of a good, bad thing. I mean, obviously the good thing is individuals don't have to make payments at this time if their student loans are in forbearance or deferment. Excuse me for a moment. But I guess the bad news is it doesn't mean the debt goes away and they have no liability for it. So ultimately, the way payments are calculated when it comes to deferments and forbearance, it does vary depending on the actual loan program itself. So when we're talking about FHA and USDA, if payments are in forbearance or deferred, we always have to use 1% of the outstanding balance as a monthly obligation. So if somebody has a $50,000 student loan balance, it's $500 a month that has to be calculated into their debt-to-income ratio. Pretty simple math as far as that, regardless of the status of the loan itself. Again, forbearance or deferment, always using 1% of the outstanding balance with both FHA as well as USDA. With conventional financing, it gets a little bit trickier because there are some variables with it. So really it depends on whether we're doing a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, and sometimes we're choosing to do one over the other depending on the circumstances. So basically the calculations when it comes to Fannie Mae, it is 1% of the outstanding balance, or if an individual is in an income-based repayment program. Income-based repayment is simply a calculation based on their income versus the amount of debt they have. And in many cases, a lower payment is allowed to be made on those particular loans. So if there's documentation that states they're in income-based repayment, and even if they have $100,000 in student loan debt and the income-based repayment program is documented and saying they're only paying $20 a month, that's all we need to use to calculate their debt-to-income ratio. In some cases, income-based repayment is $0 a month. Again, as long as it's documented that way, then that's all we have to count into their debt-to-income ratio. The other calculation with Fannie Mae is if there is a payment reporting on credit and they're in a repayment phase and it's fully amortizing the loan, essentially that payment is going to pay it off in 10 or 20 years, whatever the actual repayment program or process and period is, we can utilize that as well. So I don't want to overcomplicate this, but just keeping in mind mostly that forbearance and deferment doesn't mean that there are no payments that need to be calculated into the debt ratio. Freddie Mac, very similar to Fannie Mae. The only difference with Freddie Mac and why we often use it is instead of using 1% of the outstanding balance, we only need to use 0.5%. So again, in a situation where there would be a $50,000 student loan, instead of using a $500 monthly payment for debt ratio, we only have to calculate $250. And lastly, which essentially is the best option for a veteran and a VA loan, we generally use 1% of the outstanding balance. However, if the deferment is 12 months or more, then we can actually exclude the student loan payment from the debt ratio. So if you have any specific circumstances, obviously reach out to James or myself. I don't expect you to remember this or diagnose it with each and every client, but the most important thing from a takeaway is that even though a student loan may be in forbearance or deferment, it generally still has to be included in a debt ratio depending on the circumstances. So that's all I have. Moving on to whoever is next.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Next up, I got our settlement ladies, Carrie and Sarah, who wanted to review a couple of items. Go ahead, ladies.
Hey there. Okay, a couple things we wanted to go over this morning. One is our buyer's agent and seller's agent forms that we send out. With the way that we are set up now with the COVID procedures, we need to have email addresses for buyers and sellers as soon as possible. So if you could fill those forms out and get them back to us as soon as possible, that is a huge help. Also, if you can fill in your buyers and sellers social security numbers, now with getting domestic relations, we have to have the social security numbers up front to order them. In the past, if you would put in their name and you have a hit come up, you would then need to enter their social security number or date of birth to verify if it's them or not. Now, in order to do the search itself, you have to have their socials. So the quicker we get that information back from you, the more helpful it is for us. Sarah, you want to touch on?
Hi, we do exist. I know we haven't been around for a while because we've been busy, but we are here. A few things to touch base on. Just a reminder, because it's been coming up a lot more frequently, is the solar panel issue. I know we've touched base on it before, but if you have a buyer who's buying a house that has solar panels or you're listing one, please come talk to Carrie and I first. Just get the understanding of what needs to happen so that you can go to closing and there's no delays, because not every lender knows how to deal with them properly. We need to get you or your lender educated so they know what's going on. Also, just a reminder that in order to have settlement, like Carrie said earlier, we need email addresses for your buyers and your sellers, because we need to email out all of the documents prior to closing so that your clients can review. This is very important because we can't be getting like a closing package 5 minutes before settlement and following the proper procedures so that we can close, or sending out an email. So make sure that you're getting us that information and you're communicating with your lender that they need to get the title companies, the closing packages in enough time to follow the proper protocol for closing. I know that Dan and James at Homesale Mortgage, you guys have been fantastic. We've had all your stuff like 24 hours ahead of time. So thank you so much for helping us out and getting that accomplished. Anything you want to add to that, Carrie?
Yes. Just one other thing, with the seller authorization letters that we send out, if you have a listing side, I know we've been getting a few back that have been docu-signed, but unfortunately, a lot of the lenders are rejecting that. So if we could have a wet signature on those forms, that's a huge help.
Carrie, just a suggestion. Could you add something to that form that says specifically that it can't be electronically signed? Maybe save a step.
We can, yeah, we can try to add that to the letter.
Yeah, that way we could just probably save a couple of emails going back and forth. That'd probably be a help for us. Thanks, appreciate it. Thanks, ladies, appreciate it. James White with Homesale Insurance. I saw James here. There he is. Go ahead, James.
Yep, good morning, everybody. I'm just going to just share a quick little story I had in the past few weeks about some above ground pools, and I was quoting one in Warnersville, and it's kind of out in the country, I thought personally, and so did the realtor that I was helping out with this one. And it had a split rail fence out there about 75% of the backyard. I thought it was kind of out in the country, as I said, and I still had to check with an underwriter for each of the carriers there, and they basically had the same opinion there. Basically, the main concern they have is liability claims, especially that would be something like a child wandering, getting into the yard, and getting into the pool and drowning. They all said no on it, but they were all willing to work with me if they could get a fence around the yard, basically, and they were acceptable doing something which is like chicken wiring as well too. So that's just the story I just wanted to share. just in case you have any sort of exposure, especially on a pool. Underwriters are going to be pretty careful on that, especially if there's no fence. But they're usually willing to work with me if the buyer of the home can install a fence. And the reason they do that is, from my previous experience working with an insurance carrier, is basically you have one major loss in a state that could hurt the whole state's profitability as well too. So yep, that was basically the only thing I had to share today, and thanks for all your referrals.
Thanks, James. Now, I don't want anybody to leave this call here and say, hey, James told me it's great to put chicken wire around your a pool. That's not what he said, although I know that's what some people heard. So just a word to the wise, please. Check with James on that. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. All right. At the end of the meeting, we're going to deal with some things that I've been hearing lately, both Colleen and I, about agents and the buyer frustration that's building up based upon the environment in which we find ourselves today. So I'm going to cover some things that I think you can share with buyers once we get to that portion of the meeting. So this was sent out, I think about a week ago, just prior to when we were supposed to have our sales meeting last week, and it got delayed. And by the way, I apologize for that. Something came up on my part. Average sale price for August went up, and some of your screen might be covered there, went up 4.5% year over year from August of 2019 to August 2020. So we're getting a good, solid appreciation rate, not too crazy that it's getting up to 10%, but as long as we're in that 3, 4, 5%, that's a good, strong indication things are doing well. Next, listing inventory from last year. Believe it or not, it's actually up from last year at this time, up a little bit, not much. But you can also see that the units sold have decreased a little bit from last year. Having said that, our particular office, and keep in mind, all these figures here are Lancaster County figures, not necessarily, not specifically Berkshire Hathaway numbers. Our numbers are well up thanks to you guys. You're doing a marvelous job out there in the field. I know I'm about to get my August numbers. They look really, really good. So I'll probably share with them those figures with you next particular meeting that we get together. Median days on the market. I know everybody's experiencing this, and we're going to talk a little bit about this during our buyer frustration segment. The median days to sell a property in Lancaster County right now is 7, just 1 week. That's as low as I've ever seen it. I know you guys are dealing with it also. I know you're dealing with, let's say, a buyer, and you want to do, a tour of homes, 4 or 5 homes. You set it up today, and by tomorrow, half of those homes are already under agreement. So I get it. I'm hearing from you all the time about this. Once again, we're going to talk about this a little bit later. Interest rates are still incredible. I know they're just under 3%. I know Dan and James have been keeping us informed on where they are, what's happening with those rates. If you have sellers out there, or past clients out there that aren't necessarily thinking about selling, but may want to think about refinancing to get a better rate, please talk to Dan and James. They'd be happy to help you out. In addition, here's absorption rates. Absorption rates, once again, just in a nutshell, and you see the various categories here. This is what happens when you go to a certain price point, and I'm just going to pick out one here, $200,000 to $250,000, and you see the absorption rate is 0.5, which means that we have a half a month worth of inventory. If nothing else came on the market in that particular price range, we'd be sold out of properties in the entire county in a half of a month. In other words, 15 days. Just an incredible number. I know you guys are looking at this across the board. You're experiencing this in a lot of different price ranges. Even traditionally, our upper price range where you see there $500,000, that typically has been over 6 months. That has now dropped below 6 months also. So things are moving very quickly. You have to stay on top of the market and see the new inventory that's coming on. So I just wanted to keep you guys up to date. One other thing to utilize this absorption rate, please, with buyers. I'm hearing this a lot too, and once again, we can get to it in the buyer frustration segment. I want to make sure everybody is informing and instructing and coaching your buyers when you first meet them about what type of market they're in. This is a great tool right here to share with your buyers, in that things are moving quickly and you need to make decisions once you see something. In addition, I have had some people say they're dealing with buyers initially, and one of the first things they do on their very first offer is they throw in a lowball offer, or they throw in something that, while it might not be a lowball offer, you as a real estate agent know in the particular price range and the location and all that, that it's going to go for full price. And people are coming in $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 less. They have to lose out on a couple of these before they actually start getting it. I would show this chart to them, explain what absorption rates are, let them know what type of inventory levels are out there. I don't want to dishearten buyers, but you need to make sure that they are aware when they're out there looking at properties initially, what kind of market we're in. So do a little bit of education up front. Okay, so our Bright MLS Office exclusive form, and you notice I have the little icon next to it that says important. This procedure has changed 3 times in 3 months. I kid you not, and those of you that have utilizing this, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to get into specifically what the Office exclusive is because we've dealt with that in the past, but there now is a different procedure. In the past, Janice was helping us submit everything to Bright in a timely manner. That is going to go away. In fact, that has gone away. It's now on the agent's shoulders to do. So I'm going to walk you through the procedure, and please, once again, pay close attention to this, because what I'm about to go through, when you get into the Bright portal, your Bright portal, this is not evident. This stuff is kind of buried within Bright. To be perfectly frank, I've had conversations with a couple of people on this already. I think Bright's going to change this again because I see some flaws with what they're doing here. So here's what is going to change. When you have an office exclusive, in other words, where the seller doesn't want their property in the MLS, what you need to do is do the following. You need to get into your Bright homepage. Up in the right-hand corner, you're going to see that little orange tab with your name on it. You click on that, and then you go to Account Settings. You click on Account and Settings, and you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page. When you get down to the bottom of the page, the last set of instructions is an office exclusive certification. That's what it looks like. Click on that, and it will take you to an online form. The online form needs to be filled out for every office exclusive. Looks like this. It asks you, what's the seller's name, what's the address, so on and so forth. A lot of it's just fairly standard stuff where you're filling in the blanks. But the key thing is what is following. You need to do the following. There's a button at the bottom of this that says choose a file. You as the agent need to upload into Bright either the listing agreement, where the box is checked that says, hey, the seller doesn't want this in the MLS, either the listing agreement, or you take the existing office exclusive form that is in Dotloop and you fill that out as you have been doing, and you upload that into this particular screen. Once you do that, you click the submit button at the bottom and it goes directly to Bright. Once again, because this is specific to you, the agent, unlike in the past where Janice was helping you out, get all this stuff submitted, I'm telling you right now, this can't be done through Janice. It can only be done through your office portal. So it's a huge change. I wanted to make you aware of it. Make sure that if you're going to take an office exclusive that you look at this procedure. If you are delayed in getting this to Bright, you could be fined. So a word to the wise here. Wanted to make everybody aware. We just found out, literally, I just found out about this yesterday from Janice, where Bright got back in touch with her and said, oh, by the way, there's a different procedure for doing this. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of this morning. Some other things that have come up, we are starting to tinker a little bit more with Dotloop, and there are some things that are in buyer loops that agents aren't used to seeing perhaps in a buyer loop. Two of them are a home buyer's and seller's guide to radon, and also the pamphlet that is Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. The first one, the radon booklet, most definitely you should be giving this to everybody that is buying a home. It's not a bad idea to give it to the seller also, but every buyer that you're dealing with, you should be forwarding this on to them. In addition, the lead-based paint booklet, which you'll find in the buyer loop, that needs to go to the buyer. That is not optional. That is required. The form that you fill out, the lead-based paint disclosure, if the home was built prior to 1978, it says in one of those things that you initial, hey, the buyer is acknowledging that they have received this pamphlet. So make sure that your clients are aware that these pamphlets exist, get it to them. This is just good risk management stuff, right? Wanted to make you aware these are in our buyer loops. All right. And also wanted to spend a moment here talking about the review process. And we're already starting to get some emails going both way from our admin staff to agents and from agents back to our admin staff saying, hey, what's this and why is this being asked of me? As I have alluded to and actually talked about in previous office meetings, we are making some changes in how we utilize Dotloop. I know the admin staff just went through some recent training within the last week having to do with these loops. We're still tinkering around with it. We are working through some of the background bugs. So, you know, what I'm telling you here, some of this stuff may change a little bit. So I hope you bear with us and have a little bit of patience. It's not intended to upset you. However, the end result of this is we need to be more compliant with our files. So you're going to start receiving notices that say, hey, John, just wanted to make you aware that on page 3 of the agreement of sale that you're missing an initial at the bottom of the agreement of sale. You'll probably get an email to that regards. In the past, it wasn't unusual to get an email like that, but what is a little different is right now, the admin staff is going to, let's say, put out a tickler that is going to remind you in, let's say, 7 days to get that back into the office if it hasn't been turned in yet. And you'll continue to receive that email on a daily basis until that is actually turned in. Now, once again, this is not intended to upset you, but if we go back in time, and when I say back in time, literally 6 months ago, when our staff was sending out emails saying, hey, you're missing this, usually the agent would read it, and in many instances, that's as far as it went. So we'd get to the settlement table or get to the settlement date, and we were still missing documents. We're still missing signatures that needed to be done. And then we're scrambling around at the last second, and sometimes we'd even settle without these documents being in the loop. What we're trying to do is avoid that. So once again, this is not intended to upset you as an agent. It's intended to keep not only you compliant, but the office compliant also. So the staff is just starting to learn this. So once again, be a little patient with us. Wanted to make you aware that our goal here is just to be compliant. All right, we need to make our files as compliant as possible. So thank you on that. Wanted to make everybody aware, this was sent out by actually NAR and PAR. There is a relatively new website called Flood Factor. Flood Factor is a website that's pretty cool. If you have not been on this website, I'm going to give you some screenshots here. This is what the homepage looks like. And by the way, Flood Factor, for those that have a difficult time remembering URLs, is www.floodfactor.com. But this is what it looks like, the homepage. All you have to do is type that into your browser, type in a property address, and you'll get extensive information on flooding probability for that particular property and also for the area in which it's in. So that's the home screen. It's powered by the world's top flood risk modelers. My understanding, there's about 80 modelers that are in the background doing this. Some are government, some are private, but everything's going into this website. There's over 142 million properties and neighborhoods that have been put into Flood Factor, so it is fairly comprehensive. And in a second, I'll show you my screenshot for my property where I live. And it's a first of a kind model that shows the risk changes over time. So as you may or may not be aware, 20 years ago, literally, there may be an ever increasing risk today for more flooding in a certain area or lessening of floods in certain areas. Just wanted to make you aware of that. So just because somebody doesn't have flood insurance today doesn't mean it might not be required in the future. So this is what mine looks like. Gives you a map of the house, excuse me, a map of my neighborhood, shows where it is. And you'll see up here on the left-hand side, I have a risk of 1 in 10 of my property flooding, which I'm even surprised it's that high because I'm sitting at the highest point in Hummelstown. So if my property floods, get ready for Noah's Ark because it's coming next. But you'll see here it says minimal factors, and then you'll have links over here on the left-hand side that actually do scoring and what the historic models have been. This information is invaluable to give to your clients. And by the way, tell your clients to go there. It's another tool that you can provide for them. And by the way, Flood Factor is now on Zillow. So if you go to Zillow and you're finding properties on Zillow, they have an icon there that says, do you want to learn more about the probability of this flooding? Click the Flood Factor icon in Zillow. So it's being used more and more out there in the marketplace. I wanted to make sure everybody is aware that it exists and the tools available not only for your clients, but for you also. I also wanted to share, I think everybody knows that these exist, our Homesale digital magazines. I'm not sure everybody's utilizing them to the best of, the best that they can be done. And I'm not sure everybody is aware that there are advertising opportunities and how powerful these monthly magazines are. Just wanted to spend a second here this morning, talk about these just so you're all aware of them. First of all, how do you get these Homesale digital magazines? You can do one of two things. You can either type into a URL, type the URL into a browser, homesalemagazines.com. From homesalemagazines.com, you'll have links to the residential, the luxury, and the commercial magazine. Or you can actually just go to homesale.com and you'll see the red arrow there. That's the icon that you click that will take you to the Homesale magazines. So basically, what is in these magazines? All of Homesale's residential, commercial, land, and new home listings are in each one of these magazines. They are advertised every month until the property is sold. So this is just a screenshot of what the average residential property looks like. And oh, by the way, if somebody who hops on to the residential magazine or any of these magazines and clicks one of these, it takes you to homesale.com. It takes you right to all the property facts so people can get more information. So here's a screenshot of September 2020 magazine. I'm just going to give you some qualifications for each one. In order to appear in the magazine, stuff has to be entered into the MLS. So we just talked a second ago about properties that are office exclusive. They would not appear in the Homesale magazine. The property must not expire before the actual publication date. And you may be asking, well, how do we know when the publication date's occurring? I'm going to deal with that at the end. There's a slide that's all about that. Lots of land must all, as long as there's ad copy and ad writer, they can also appear in the Homesale residential magazine. In addition, we have a luxury magazine. The luxury magazine, in order to qualify for that, properties in Pennsylvania need to be at least $500,000 or more. In Maryland, those are $650,000 or more. Each property that is less than $1 million gets a third of a page. And once again, these are clickable things that, once again, if you click it, you can get additional information. Properties that are over $1 million get a full page in the Luxury Collection magazine. One other stipulation with this magazine, some people list properties, farmettes, let's say, where, you know, there's 150 acres and you have this small house that sits on it, but the total package is over, let's say, $750,000. Well, on the surface, that appears that that could be qualifying for the luxury magazine. But one of the stipulations is the vast majority of the value has to be in the actual structure itself, not in the land. So you want to keep that in mind if you're trying to position your seller and talking with them about Luxury Collection magazine. And we have to have at least 4 photos, high resolution photos, for it to make the Luxury Collection magazine. What else goes on the luxury edition? All our certified luxury agents are listed in the Luxury Collection magazine on right inside the back cover. Here you see a screenshot of that, which leads to the next question, which is, well, how do I become a luxury certified agent? Here are the qualifications to become a luxury certified agent. You have to have at least 3 sides of properties that are over $500,000 within the last 2 years. If you do that, you qualify initially. Then there's a point system where you have to have at least 3 points. And here is the point system. 1 point for actively participating in a BHHS luxury marketing and education program, which are available online. 1 point served on a non-realtor charitable board or a committee. 1 point if you hold a professional real estate designation, and 2 points if you're a current member of BHHS's Leading Edge Presidents or Chairman's Circle Club. So if this is you and the parameters fit you, you would qualify to become a luxury certified agent. Just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that. And the final magazine is the commercial magazine, where we have land or building that is commercially or industrially zoned. Multi-unit properties can go in here as long as there's 3 units or more. I know a lot of people say, well, commercial really is 4 units or more, but we've made an exception here for the commercial magazine. It's 3 or more units. So how are these things distributed and what happens to them? Once again, we produce these once a month, each one of these magazines once a month until the property is actually sold. They are posted in highly visible websites like homesale.com, homesaleluxury.com, issue.com, and also on Facebook. Additional sources of distribution, they are emailed, and you should know this, they are emailed to every home sale agent every single, every single month, and also to other agents in our association. So every single agent in our association gets a copy of this magazine. They are also emailed to all luxury certified agents across the BHHS network. They are also emailed to subscribers. So there's consumers that get on here and say, hey, this is pretty cool. I'd like to get this on an ongoing basis. They can subscribe to this magazine. In addition, they are advertised every month to a targeted audience where there's over 1 million Facebook and Instagram users. So as you can see here, it gets out to a wide array of people. Here are our statistics for this. For each one of the Homesale Magazine, the Homesale Luxury Magazine, and the Homesale Commercial Magazine. These are numbers from January through July of 2020 of this year. So as you look here, these are some pretty incredible numbers. If you are in the process of listing a property or trying to list a property, I would share these statistics with your seller. Let them know that they will appear in this magazine. The thing that's most interesting about these stats, though, is look at what the average read time is. For the residential magazine, the average read time, in other words, when somebody logs on and looks at it initially, it's over 4 minutes long. That's an incredible number. If you know anything about people's attention span when they get on the internet, people are clicking all around doing all kinds of things. 4 minutes is an incredible number. So I wanted to share these numbers with you here today. You also have the option, if you want to, in addition to the standard advertising, which comes to you as a home sale agent, you can pay to have larger ads within the home sale magazines. I'm not going to go over this because as part of the attachment that I send out after this meeting, I'm going to give you a rate structure sheet that will share with you what you can do in each one of these particular magazines, how large ads can be, that type of thing. But suffice it to say, you can get additional advertising for your sellers. In addition, one of the things that they've just come up with is inside the front cover of each one of these magazines, there is going to be a video of a property that an agent wants to display. It will look like this. This is the size of it. It's a half of a page. The pricing on this is $300 on the inside cover of each one of these magazines. The agent's going to have to produce the video themselves, and it needs to come in MP4 format. And if you need assistance in doing this, or how you put that together, either come and see me, or our agent services department is glad to help you out there. And finally, these are some of the rate sheets and deadline publication dates that are coming in flyers that I'm going to get out after this meeting. It'll outline basically everything I've just reviewed here with you for your convenience, and you'll have it not only for the balance of this year, but the ones for 2021 are coming up also. There's also some promotional items. You can obviously show this in your listing presentation. It's really easy to show up or show when you're in front of sellers. There are social media things like this down here, this purple one that you can post on your social media sites. You can send an email to every seller and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's a link to the magazine. Your property appears on page number 46. Wanted you to be aware of it. Why don't you click through and see it? No, by the way, why don't you share this on your social media page? That way all your friends and people that are in your sphere can see it also. So it's a good idea to get this out there to as many people as possible. So those are some promotional ideas for you. So in the time that we have left here, I wanted to talk a little bit about buyer frustration. And as a manager, I'm hearing this literally across the board, virtually every single day, with people who are coming to me, agents that are coming to me and saying, gosh, this is so frustrating what we're dealing with right now. I set up 7 showings and only 2 of them I could actually see because the other 5 went under agreement. It's really, really a different type of market that we're finding ourselves in. It is truly an ultra seller's market. I just thought I'd spend a moment here today and share some thoughts with you on things that you can do with your buyers and things that you can actually do as an agent also. So understand that buyers right now are on this emotional roller coaster. They may be first-time buyers. They may be buyers that have bought and sold houses in the past, but I'm telling you, no one has ever experienced a market like what we're in right now. It is incredibly fast moving, as I'm sure everybody is aware. We're getting lots of canceled showings because things are going under agreement as quickly as they go on the market. And even if you do get an offer in, a lot of times you are competing with multiple offers. You know, it's not unusual to have 5 to 10 offers on a property in the span of 1 or 2 days. It's that fast moving market. The one thing I will say to you is, as an agent, your buyers are looking to you for assurance. I have seen agents in front of their buyers, and I have, by the way, I'm involved with LCAR a lot, and I do see co-op agents at LCAR that are kind of woe is me, and they're doing this woe is me in front of their buyer. That's the last thing that you want to do at this point in time. You want to encourage your buyer. Yes, it's frustrating. Yes, I know you've submitted 4 offers and none of them have been accepted, but this is the market that we're in. And in a second, I'm going to show you something that you might want to share with them. So they are looking to you for assurance. Make sure that you carry around a positive attitude with this. It's a tough market, I realize it. The agent benefits, though, if you get through this market together. It reinforces your worth as an agent. And in addition, your client, if they get through this with you, and I know you're getting a good amount of buyers and sellers through this market, I'm telling you, they are going to look back and they're going to say, wow, I couldn't have done that without you. So even though this is much more difficult than it was maybe a year or 2 ago, because of how fast things are moving, trust me, your clients are looking to you for advice. They're looking to you not only for the advice, but for their friends in the future. When they go and they move into their home and they're referring people on to you, I guarantee you they are saying to their friends, you got to work with so-and-so, because my heavens, what we went through to get this home, and they were in it every step of the way. So keep that in mind. Keep your attitude up. So I'm going to ask you, keep your buyers focused on what I refer to as the big picture. I know it's easy right now to focus on that little Polaroid snapshot that you see in the middle of the screen here, but look at the entire landscape. Look at what it means if you can get your buyer into a home right now, what it's going to mean to them in the very near future. Because if they're just focusing on the frustration of trying to get into a home right now, you're going to lose some of these people. Some of these people are going to say, hey, I'm just going to hold on until the market gets a little better. Well, I get it. I get that you want to hold on, but guess what? The market's not going to stop. We're going to continue to see appreciation in the market. I guarantee you, if you were talking to Dan Rank or James Ream right now, they'd be saying, hey, these rates aren't going to last forever. So if you want to wait, I get it, but don't expect to have a 2 3/4% 30-year interest rate years from now, or a couple of years from now. So focus on something that is bigger than what you're experiencing right now. Now, here's one way to do it. As most of you know, I'm a very analytical person, and a lot of times buyers that are going through this are really frustrated and they're getting really emotional. Have them take a deep breath, put something like this in front of them. I call this a 5-year plan. And you got buyers that are coming to you saying, hey, I just think I want to wait right now. I want to wait until there's more inventory in the market, until something else happens. I don't want to feel pressured at this point in time. So let's assume that you bought something today for $230,000. $230,000 is about the average sale price in Lancaster County. The mortgage amount that you could get on this is $224,250. That's an FHA with 2.5% down. I used an interest rate of 2 3/4% here for 30 years, and I'm using an appreciation rate of 4% per year. You saw early on the stats that I gave you at the beginning of this meeting. Appreciation rates are actually higher than that, but I wanted to stay a little bit conservative here. So here's a 5-year plan. This is what it's like in year 1 to get into the home, Granted, you had to claw and scratch your way to get into this home, but now you're in it and you're like, this is great. Well, here's what happens after 5 years of being in this home using these numbers right here. The sale price after 5 years, this home that you bought for $230,000 is about $269,000. You have your mortgage paid down to just under $200,000. So you need to focus on the big picture. If you have a buyer that wants to walk away today, you need to share some figures like this with them and say, listen, what you're doing right now, I guess I get that it's frustrating, but this is a $70,000 decision that you're making by just walking away right now. Now, granted, you can't guarantee all these numbers, and I tried to remain as conservative as possible, but you ought to be putting something like this in front of people right now. I just talked to somebody, a good friend of mine the other day, and she was lamenting the fact that she's never bought a home. She's 40 years old, never bought a home, and she's looking at the market and she says, I'm just going to sit this out. And I shared this with her, or versions of this. And I said, I get that you just want to sit out, but tell me how much money you've been spending in rent over the last 5 years. And she tallied it up and she put her numbers of what she was paying in rent over the last 5 years. And then I showed her this and she said, I got to get out there today and start looking at stuff. Now, she's not from this area. She's a friend of mine that's living actually across the country, but I shared this information with her and she's now off of the fence looking at properties, whereas before she wasn't doing it. So I thought I'd share this with you this morning. So one other thing before we end today's session, we're getting some pushback, complaints from not only our agents, but we're getting them from co-op agents about this seller finding suitable housing. And it's becoming a frustrating thing for all involved. And basically it revolves around a lot of communication or a lack of communication. So I'm going to share some things here with you. First of all, if you are working with a seller and the seller says to you, hey, we got to move, our family's expanding, or, I got a new job and I need to be, 20 minutes away from where we are here, got to sell our house. I would share with this seller right now, listen, I know the ideal situation is for you to go from this house to house number 2 without anything in between. Once again, share some of these stats with them at the beginning of the session today. But the reality is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that's going to be really, really difficult to do because you may not find the property that you're looking for without scratching and clawing and whatnot. So exhaust other possibilities. And I often share with people that ask me, I have moved, and I'm in my 4th home. I've moved 4 times in my life. Every single time that I moved as an adult, it was new construction. And every single time I sold my house within 30 days, moved out and moved into an apartment while my house was being completed. Yeah, it was a little bit more frustrating in that I had to put stuff into storage and move into an apartment. But guess what? I had the money in my back pocket. I knew it was there, and I knew it was only a matter of time for me moving to house number 2. Now, granted, my situation is all new construction, but the same thing applies here. If somebody has to move, talk with them at least up front about, hey, if we can't find you stuff, are you willing to give this agreement that you have in hand with a buyer that wants your house now just because you can't find something? Is that what you really want to do? At least talk about it before you list the property. So exhaust all possibilities. And if that is not possible, here's the other bugaboo that we're getting right now. We're getting a lot of people come back to us after the fact, after a buyer submits an agreement of sale on a property and finds out after the fact, even sometimes after the agreement of sale is actually signed, and the seller says, oh, by the way, I got to find suitable housing. That type of stuff should be in the remarks section of the MLS. So if you find yourself in this particular boat, please, if you're working with the seller, put those remarks into the MLS so that you're warning buyers ahead of time that, hey, they need to have a special clause in there that deals with this. You know, by the way, while we're dealing with special clauses, I've seen all kinds of special clauses having to do with this. Most of the special clauses that I'm reading aren't very well constructed. If you're working with the buyer and you're trying to give the seller the opportunity to find suitable housing, use the following clause. And I'm going to read it word for word, which I hesitate to do here in most instances, but I think it's important. This agreement is contingent upon seller finding suitable housing within blank days. By the way, this is the most crucial thing because most of these clauses that I'm reading in agreements have no time frames on it. It just says, hey, contingent upon seller finding suitable housing, and you find yourself the day before settlement and the seller still doesn't have suitable housing. So that's a problem. Of this agreement being fully executed. If seller cannot find suitable housing within this time frame, seller will notify buyer in writing via email to buyer's agent that this agreement shall be null and void and all deposit monies returned to the buyer according to paragraph 26 of this agreement. All other terms and conditions to remain the same. Contract timeframes, including but not limited to deposit monies, inspections, mortgage and title applications, to begin upon buyer receipt of written notification of seller finding suitable housing. So we cover all our bases there. Yeah, it's a little bit long, but gosh, everything's on paper, up front, everybody's aware of it. Everybody knows the time frames you're dealing with. So obviously it's contained within this presentation. This presentation is going out after this session today. Please copy this, put it into your Dotloop account. There's a spot in there for standard clauses, and pull it out when the situation arises that you need something like this. And finally, our bit of inspiration before we finish. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. I'm getting a lot of buyers and sellers, and I'm hearing from agents now that are getting pressure from buyers and sellers because they can't get into properties or it's a frustrating market. And some agents are getting frustrated with their clients and they're kind of looking at themselves in some cases and saying, hey, I'm doing the best I can. Don't let somebody else's interpretation of what they see, cause you to question the value proposition that you bring to the table. In the market that we're in right now, you are a valuable commodity. You need to know that. And if you want it reinforced, come to me or Colleen and we'll tell you how valuable you are. Okay. Hey, everybody have a great day. Looks like it's going to be beautiful out there. Once again, we're heading into fall. I'll send out all this information that I just reviewed here in the presentation after the fact. If you have any questions on anything you read here, please come and see myself or Colleen. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Tom.